Diplomacy players, welcome to the Era of Empire demo. So you're going to get a chance to either play on a giant walkable map, so don't worry about putting your feet on here as I'm doing now, or one of our large fabric mats in there, or on one of the first factory copies of the game. Please take good care of it. It has to go to other conventions. All right. So in Era of Empire, you're one of the 7 great powers, but instead of before World War I, you're in the age of new imperialism. Right? That's why it's called Era of Empire. This is a re-release and reimagined Colonial Diplomacy. If you are diplomacy fans, you probably know Colonial was released in 1994. So this has been updated. Old rules gone, new rules added, updated map, updated pieces, made for the new gaming audience. So the powers that you're going to play in this game are Russia, Turkey, Britain, China, Japan, France, and the Netherlands. Congratulations, Netherlands. You are upgraded from a supply center to your own power. Our Dutch fans who've seen this are so excited because in the original, their piece color was black, and now we went with the Royal Dutch orange for them. We're really making sure to hit their national pride with this. So your goal in this game, like in diplomacy, is to reach a certain supply center count to outright win. In this game, it's to reach 22 supply centers as an outright win. There are more centers in this game than base diplomacy. So it's actually easier to get to that solo than it is in diplomacy. Stalemate lines don't really matter in this game. You could sit behind a 9-center stalemate, a 3-center stalemate, whatever, and another player will go and win the game on you. So this is about being aggressive, moving quick. In terms of the gameplay, the mechanics are the same as diplomacy with a couple of changes. I'm going to go through the base diplomacy mechanics and then let you know what's different. So you start in 1870, you have spring and fall turns just like you would in diplomacy, where you negotiate for a period of 10 minutes, then have 2 minutes of silent order writing. At the conclusion of that, you reveal your orders, we adjudicate at the same time, and proceed to the next season. At the end of every game year, you look to see how many of these supply centers you own versus how many units you have on the board, and you will build or disband. A couple of things to note about sort of the map in this game and then those special rules. You have the Suez Canal here as a special feature. It functions the same as the Kiel Canal in the base diplomacy, which means that if you're in the Mediterranean Sea, you need to go to Egypt first before you go to the Red Sea. And vice versa. You have to traverse through Egypt just like you would have to traverse through Kiel and trying to go Helgoland all the way to the Baltic Sea. Functions the exact same. All right. In addition, if you've played in the base game of diplomacy, you may note there are no coasts in this game. No coasts. So you don't have to learn the special coast rules, being specific about how to write it. It's gone. So we just modified the map so that there were no coasts available for you, so you don't have to worry about accidentally parking your fleet on the wrong coast and making a mistake. Right? All of the actions you can take in this game are the same as base diplomacy. You have hold, which is you hold in place with the strength of 1. You have movement, which is you move to an adjacent unoccupied location, where you just write the beginning location of your unit, an indication of movement like 2, a dash, an arrow, whatever is going to be unambiguous, showcasing that you're intending to move to an adjacent location. Fleets can, of course, be in any named water area, as well as any named coastal area, as in connected to water. Armies, of course, are still restricted to only exist on land areas. They cannot be out to sea. An army could go from Syria to Egypt and then pass through. You can walk through as long as you're in one. Another feature of movement in this game that's important are these little yellow arrows here. In the base diplomacy game, Sweden and Denmark touch, but it isn't always obvious to people, even though they're adjacent on there and it has to be written in the rules. And here we're being more explicit about it, especially where you've got little gaps, where these are known straits. So an army can go from Vladivostok to Sakhalin. You can send an army or a fleet if you want to from Madras to Ceylon, just directly adjacent. So that means you could literally walk down the entirety of the Japanese islands if you wanted to. You'll note in a few places where it's at, and in this case geographically, we've enlarged certain areas. Like Singapore is very small. How are you going to put a unit on there, let alone a marker that you own it? So it's been enlarged just for the sake of gameplay here. Similarly, we all know, and it's in the rules because we're going to get a lot of pedants yell at us, We know this is the island of Hainan. Everyone knows who looks at geography. If you're here for diplomacy, then you love map. All right, we all love map. It's actually here, but we've shifted it here, again, just for gameplay purposes. Just to make it so you can put a unit there and a supply center ownership for gameplay purposes. All right? So you can hold, you can move. Support is the same, where you can support a unit to do something. Like, I'm going to order Bombay to Mysore. I can have Madras support that, or vice versa. I can order Madras to Mysore and have Bombay support that. Support is simply, if you can move there, you can support an action there. You can support one of your units, you can support someone else's units. That's part of the negotiation. Right? Support can be cut if you have an outside unit coming in and attacking one of those supporting units. So if I attack Bombay here, I cut support on this movement into Mysore, or vice versa on there. So just know you have to have an outside unit in order to cut that support. As you saw earlier, if you play diplomacy, this is also a bit of a dexterity game if you're playing on the large map with the plotter rods. The last type of action you can take is what's known as a convoy. That allows you, for a fleet that's out at sea or multiple fleets, to convoy an army across the body of water. The fleet's order is South China Sea convoys Annam to Manila. The Army's order is Annam to Manila, and it is convoyed over here. Strength 1 attack, which means that someone could bounce it with a strength 1 into there, or if they're already sitting there, it would bounce back. Convoys can be stopped either by stopping at its destination, as in with an attack of equal or greater strength, or if you manage to dislodge the fleet, as in not just simply attacking it, but with enough strength that it would cause it to retreat. Fleets can be chained together such that you can have multiples, and I can send Manila into Port Arthur here. Order is Manila to Port Arthur. Order is East China Sea, convoys Manila to Port Arthur. The order here is Yellow Sea, convoys Manila to Port Arthur. And it will travel through here. Let's see, can I do it? Can I do it? I'm not an expert shuffleboard player, but I can move the army to Port Arthur. Now, if one of those fleets in here decided to do something else, not write the convoy order, let's just say he's going to go back to Kyoto, then guess what? That convoy doesn't happen. Everyone has to match up for it to actually go through. So you have hold, move, support, convoy. Here's what's net new about Era of Empire. We're changing up how you can build, all right? Builds can happen in any center that you own. There are no more home centers for you, just starting locations. So if you own the center, you can build there. So aka forward builds in the game, the mechanic is called conscription. Because this is the age of new imperialism, you're conscripting the local populace to fight for you. The second mechanic that is different about Era of Empire compared to diplomacy is conversion, that also occurs in the build phase. Conversion is if you have one of your units in a supply center during the build phase, you can write Army Baghdad. And when the builds are revealed, you've converted. All right, you don't need to have net builds to do this. Just simply having a unit in a supply center will allow you to convert it from an army to a fleet or a fleet to an army. Just simply specify whether it's going to be an army or a fleet in the location. So you could have no builds. You could have disbands, but still if you have units in supply centers, you can convert them. That only occurs during the build, aka the winter phase. That allows you to build new units, or when you disband units, conscripting for forward builds or converting them in this way. So these mechanics were added in because these were actually the most requested mechanics by new players. Players were frustrated about only building in home centers, and this is a larger map. So it requires you, if you want the gameplay to go the same as diplomacy, to be able to be more aggressive and move forward. Additionally, the conversion is based upon this map doesn't have the same sort of evenness setup that you would in classical diplomacy, where you have by necessity an ability to switch over from armies to fleets, fleets to armies to give you more flexibility. So that means every winter phase is critical. In the fall turn, because there's no negotiation in the winter phase, have those discussions with your neighbors. Make sure that suddenly they don't park next to you with those fleets and convert to armies to trudge through Central Asia on you. You have to be extra careful in this case. All right, so we have spring turn, fall turn, and then build. 22 centers to win. Just like in diplomacy now, you can choose to end by a time or turn limit. In this case, we're going to end by 2 o'clock. Whoever has the most centers by that time wins, or if you get to 22, congratulations, you win. What questions do you have about Era of Empire before we divide up to play?
So straight, so here to here.
Yep.
That's a single move?
That is a single move. You don't have to, as a fleet, go to either one of these to get in, and armies you can go directly from. So they're just saying it's adjacent. Yep, so this is the Himalaya Mountains. It is impassable. It's a general rule for all diplomacy. If you don't have a name, you can't move there. You cannot get from Nepal to Tibet. You have to go around to either one of these provinces first. You can convoy, but they have to indicate that their army is moving from starting location to ending location. It all has to line up. So there's no sort of convoy kidnapping that occurs. That's part of the negotiations. Yes, because you have this border right here. So you can go directly from here to here. So at the end of each turn, you look to see how many of these supply centers you own, the stars, versus how many units you have on the board. If you have more stars owned than units, you get to build and add more to the board. If you have fewer supply centers than units, you have to disband, but you always have the ability to convert units as needed on here. So ownership of these areas is determined at the end of a fall turn. If you walk in the spring and walk out, you don't get credit. And that's why we have these little bases or supply center markers, is so that way you can recall who owns what. Most especially important even for experienced diplomacy players on like a new map.